You're tuned into the Growth Ceilings podcast, the show for builders, dreamers, and leaders ready to break limits and grow beyond what they thought possible.
Welcome to the Growth Ceilings podcast. I'm your host, Jim Lovelady. I am a professional EOS implementer. EOS stands for the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Today, I'm joined by Robyn Deering, a franchise consultant with the Franchise Consulting Company and the owner of Fiber New Cape Coral and Forever Charge in Southwest Florida. Robyn brings more than 15 years of experience in customer success, training, and project management. She's an award-winning former journalist who shifted from corporate life into entrepreneurship, and now she helps others, especially veterans and professionals in transition. She helps them to discover the right franchise to match their goals and lifestyle. Robyn, welcome this morning to the show. Nice to see you.
Thanks.
You've called yourself a corporate refugee, and I love that. What pushed you towards franchising, and when did you know it was the right next step?
Well, like a lot of people who followed the same trajectory that I have, I'm pretty average. Went to college, had an engineering background. For engineering, a lot of those jobs were in corporate America, applications engineering, software engineering, customer service became more automated, virtual environments. Time after time, I and my team members that I worked with over the years, we would build platforms and we would get processes perfected. We would get engineering specs to match production and, just all those little fine-tuned things and start really excelling in, the metric systems as they came out, to quantify performance and things like that. And people like me, we really excelled at it. Not everyone did. There were a lot of people that just, would leave the industry rather than make those kind of transitions. But for those of us who stuck it out, we believed in corporate and we were always the people that were leading the charge to embrace change and stuff like that. And as soon as we would get things at a really operational point, we'd find out the company got sold, we're dismantling everything you just did, shipping it overseas. And I'm not picking on any employer I ever had. It just happened over and over. And this last transition, and it was a good company. I still am friends with, people that work there. I just wasn't willing to keep doing that and just ratcheting down on it. And one of the things that I noticed as I was counseling other clients and things like that with products and getting them in a winning strategy, to keep up with today's technology, to stay Google compliant, to keep their marketing on point. So many of them they're like, well, I don't have the resources to do that. And so their small businesses would fail. And I just really hated seeing that. And while I was evaluating my choices, the franchise consulting company reached out to me and really took a deep dive into franchising. Like most people, I always thought franchising meant, fast food and, working like a slave and paying too much royalties and, it was kind of a sucker's game. But I didn't know that there were so many franchises like the one that you're operating that utilize a higher level of skill that really fits a niche and the economy of scale when it comes to resources like the back-end operating systems, the marketing, and just the camaraderie, the synergy that happens when different franchisees get together. It really, really resonated with me, and I've seen it succeed over and over and over, and it's just fabulous. And I'm dedicated to the veterans because I worked alongside them. I come from a military family and I have family in the military now. So it's just a real blessing that I like to pass on.
There's a lot to unpack in what you just shared. I'm going to jump right into it and ask, well, I'll state first, corporate refugee. I think there are so many of our listeners who already have made the move. If not, they're considering it. And I love that as a label. I certainly identify with that. I made the move myself, EOS. I'm a franchise owner. So there's a lot to explore with you. And beginning with the fact that you yourself own 2 franchises while consulting others. How does being an owner yourself influence how you guide clients?
I think it builds sort of some street cred. A lot of people go, "Oh, you bought one yourself," and it's like, yeah, and actually the fiber new that I bought was for mostly my son who's graduating from high school, and he said, "Mom, I just don't want to go to college." He said, "I'm not real good at school," but he's always been good at business. He's tagged along with me to trade shows and always comports himself well. You saw him at a workshop. He's not afraid to shake hands and talk to people and stuff. So I share with prospective clients a lot of the journey that we had, of how selecting the right franchise is going to be a different journey for each person. The corporate refugee, people like us, that it's like we went through those wheels turning and stuff. There's certain franchises that will work really, really well. That'll be like, oh, this is what I've done for years, but now I get the profit instead of some little drip vested K that's like riding some wave I can't control. It's like, oh, I actually get to put some of that in my pocket and invest more wisely. So I try to, draw out from the person what's the lifestyle you're looking for? What did you enjoy doing? And let's find the franchise because there's thousands of them. Let's find the one that'll fit that dream that you have. The American dream is still working, but you just have to dig a little to find the one that's going to make that come true for you.
You mentioned earlier that you're part of a military family. What service was your family in?
My dad was a lieutenant commander in the Navy. He was a lifer, and came from an electrical engineering background, became a submariner. Uh, Really taught me the importance of standard operating procedures and the methodology and results. Those are invaluable life lessons. And my son is currently in the Marines, Okinawa, Japan. He's a lance corporal this year.
Well, it should go without saying, but I'm going to be explicit about it. Thank you for your service, both as a daughter of your father and his service, but now mom of someone in the Marines. That's pretty special. And like your family, like yourself, I served in the Air Force. I'm a veteran as well. We're just on the outskirts of Veterans Day next week. So I salute your father, your son, and especially you for all that you've contributed to our country. Thank you very much. So I want to tie into that because I did meet your son at one of the veteran events for Southwest Florida, or SWFL Inc. You're active in veteran business events. That's how you and I met. Why does franchising fit so well for veterans transitioning into civilian life?
Well, it's a two-pronged thing. One is, as I mentioned before, I learned personally under the guidance of my father, the importance of a standard operating procedure. And veterans get that. The ones who excelled, if they love that aspect of the military, they'll love that aspect of franchising. They're going to feel at home with the team spirit of a franchise. That's part of the journey is finding the team that feels right to you. There might be 5 different painting companies, for example, but each one of them has a different feel to it, different people behind the scenes. So finding the organization that feels natural is easier with veterans, and franchisors recognize that. So they have a lot of discounts in addition to the grant program that I'm personally involved with that awards some seed money to help with those first few months of operation. They'll give discounts on the front end because that's exactly the kind of people that they're looking for, and also feel that debt of gratitude, that we want to give back. And the other part of it, I think that really resonates and makes veterans so good at franchising is they've learned over the years that it's okay to delegate. There's some franchisees I see early on, it's like they'll really burn themselves out trying to do everything. And veterans are really good. It's like, okay, well, I can count on this department to do that. I can get my hands off of that, go do what I'm supposed to do it well, and trust that the machine's going to keep running. Those gears will keep turning behind the scenes. So it's a very operational based business model, and that's where veterans shine.
Yeah, I don't want to speak for all veterans, but I think for many of us, and I can certainly relate my own experience, coming out of the Air Force, why didn't, to me, why didn't everybody else operate with the sense of structure, accountability, and discipline? Why doesn't everybody else get that, right? And for a veteran going into civilian life, into the business world, that can be confounding and can sometimes be confusing, actually. And it's hard to kind of navigate through that without some guidance or some other path that provides that. It's probably what led me to becoming an EOS implementer, because that's exactly what I facilitate, coach, and teach are principles of a business operating system that instills discipline, accountability, creates a vision, identifies who we are, where we're going, how we're going to get there, and assigning metrics each seat in the business so that everyone understands role, responsibility, there's clarity, they understand their contribution to the business as we quantify what we expect of them. And it really helps to transform a business that might be struggling or hitting a growth ceiling, or the owner's not getting what he or she wants out of the business. So a really good tie in there. I love how you shared the idea of delegation, because to your very point, entrepreneurs, business owners who are listening right now will identify, man, I take on the weight of the world. I've got Post-it notes all over my area where I work. I got a million things going on at once. I can't get to everything, even with the best of intentions. You come into the office or you come into your place of work in the morning, you got 2, 3, 4 things on your mind that you're going to get done that day. And maybe you get 1, 2, maybe 3 done, but 5 more come your way. And so delegating and elevating your team is so important. And to your point, I think as a veteran, I can completely relate to that, because that's the structure of the military and it works very well in that regard. And when others embrace a system, embrace the structure, they see how that can benefit for their path forward. So for people leaving corporate jobs, what are the most common myths or mistakes they make when they're exploring franchises?
It's an emotional journey for a lot of people because, we drank the Kool-Aid. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
we believed, the big corporation was, going to take care of us, and felt a loyalty to something that we had helped build, especially like in the last, couple of decades. There was such a merging of businesses that if you were on the front lines of that, behind our desk or whatever, you were just literally, and this is another thing that veterans are really good at, stringing things together that didn't really fit, finding solutions to make various systems work that really weren't designed to work together and things like that, problem solving just on the fly. So to invest that much of your career in building something and seeing that corporation get successful while you weren't getting the compensation that you needed is still like one of the biggest hurdles. It's like, well, I feel a security of that steady paycheck.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I show them things like, so let's look at your 401k, let's look at the percentage that you got, and let's look at the percentage of margin in what I would consider a successful franchise. I really don't introduce franchises to people that don't roughly double their income, because otherwise, why would you be motivated to have all those sticky notes and stuff that you're talking about? So let's, look at that. And then let's look at sort of a return on investment, point of view, and look at what you were earning from that drip on the stock market and the anxiety that you had watching that go up. How does that compare to, the return on investment that franchisees are seeing? And what could you do to mitigate that anxiety of, well, I'm not going to get a paycheck unless I get jobs, unless I get clients or whatever it is that fills that funnel for that particular franchise. And a good franchise is going to have a strategy for you. And a lot of times it involves, smiling and shaking hands or whatever it does to gin
Yes.
lead. And that's the best cure I've ever found for anxiety is get out there and do some action. I get them to talk to other franchisees and the franchise that they're interested in. It's like, well, let's go talk to some people who've been doing it 1 year, 10 years. Let's see what it's like on a day to day. And if it feels like something you can do, if you feel like you're talking to people who do what you do, that you could do what they
Right.
do, then
Right.
that's probably a good fit. But it's that paycheck, and it's like, well, it was secure until they yanked the rug out from under you. How many times have you had to look for a new job in the last, 10, 15 years? So that's the biggest hurdle.
You and I share an affinity for the veterans and for all the right reasons you mentioned. And I want to share very quickly the EOS model, which is a business operating system. Beyond veterans, I have an affinity for franchisees. And the reason for that, and correct me if I'm wrong, Robin, I'd like to get your perspective on this, but from my perch, when I see someone who's a franchise owner, and especially when they're getting started, having a business operating system is so important. Before that franchisee starts hiring people, starts scaling their business, perhaps gets stuck, gets frustrated, feels like they made the wrong move, I encourage them to step back and to evaluate what they're operating with and do they have the right structure in place? So, defining a vision. Do you have the right people in the right seats? Do you have it defined what those right seats are? Do you have a structure that you're looking to scale to? So, if you've got a 1 year plan, a 3 year picture, a 10 year vision, what does your business look like in those phases? And then using data. What are the key metrics? If you're a franchise owner, what metrics, what report card would you need if you were elsewhere to look at the metrics and say, my business is healthy or we're off track? And then how do you and your team solve the myriad of issues that come at you each and every day? There's a system that we teach to solve those issues. And then the thing that everybody loves is process, right? You talk about standard operating procedures. I think we get stuck in our heads like process is such a big ornery thing, but it can be really done well and simplified. We have a tool for doing that as well. And then finally, bring your vision down to the ground to what we call traction. That's where you get clarity. That's where everybody in the business understands who you are, where you're going, and how you're going to get there. So when I meet franchisees, I get excited. I have an affinity for them because I feel like putting a business operating system in as early as possible in their own ownership journey will help them long term. And in fact, I've got a number of existing clients who fit that profile, and it's worked really, really well for them to embrace EOS into their business and to see them flourish and now growing and scaling as they go along. So all that said, you got a perspective on that as well?
That would speak more to the flip side of what I do when I'm helping a small business owner become a franchise. Because by the time I'm presenting a franchise to people, it has those systems in place. I mean, you just can't operate on any level without that kind of organization now. And I'm glad that you brought that up because, if you're looking for a franchise, you really need a franchise consultant and you really need someone to help you through the weeds to find a quality franchise that has that kind of system that, if you're paying royalties, you should feel like it's worth it. And a system like yours is going to make that worth it. And if you're a small business owner and you want to expand and you want to do that on other people's money, and again, I can help veterans with this. We've got a grant program for that as well. We can get you to market so that when I go to trade shows, I could be showing your business as a potential. And then you've got franchisees buying your model. And EOS would be a good place for them to start if they haven't got an operating system. If they've got 10 million spreadsheets and disassociated scheduler and they don't have anything that's keeping track of all those metrics, then that would be like a first step. It's like, okay, well, let's get you organized and get that operating so that you can take that next level. And then I can help them become a franchise, and then boom. I mean, if they have the vision to scale, and I mean, I've seen businesses go from a couple of locations to 150 within like 18 months. I mean, it's an astronomical path to success, but it does start with getting that first location. Has to not only be profitable but replicable, and a good operating system is going to make that replicable.
Yeah, you and I are singing from the same hymn page here. It's see varying degrees of support given by franchisors to the franchisees. I think I've witnessed the extreme of you get a manual when you make your investment and you're supposed to follow the manual without any guidance, right? And you're supposed to get your business running while interpreting these tools and there's really little to no guidance on how to do it. Yeah, you go to some conference or you go to these meetings with people, but you're fuzzy on what needs to be done. And it just doesn't click sometimes for somebody. And oftentimes we need somebody like yourself, or perhaps someone with an operating system like EOS to help guide you through and how to build that so you can get off the right start. I'm built EOS. We typically target businesses 10 to 250 employees, but it's ironic. I've got franchise consulting businesses, franchise clients who have embraced EOS, even if they're one person or one employee. They're finding benefit with EOS because having that structure enables them. It's almost like the delegate discussion. It enables them to do what's important. It enables them to free themselves to do what they love doing. And the system itself kind of takes care of itself when it's done right. So without going into a whole bunch of detail here at this point, let's move on to another topic. You've written about women in franchising and the importance of flexibility and support systems. What real world examples stand out to you?
Well, I wrote about the women in Fibrenew. That was an incredible journey for a lot of women because it's a trade that had been, predominantly male. You don't think of women repair people too much. So have a team spirit. The training for that franchise is extensive and ongoing. So it's literally something that anybody could learn. And so by opening that door, they have enabled women to become very self-sufficient. It's the best cure for the glass ceiling. I mean, I'm telling you. And being flexible is just, kind of opening your mind. So many younger people are like, I want to be a social influencer. I'm only interested in like digital marketing. It's like, well, especially if you don't want to be replaced by AI and you want something that can have an income, a revenue stream, from day one. There's nothing better than the trades. You're not going to get replaced if it's a hands-on thing that a robot can't do yet. And one of the coolest stories from the other side, there was a franchisor now with Hawaii Fluid Art. She literally created her franchise mostly virtual in the beginning. She had a great product, a great idea, but actually getting it organized where it could be replicable and getting the operations manual and the software and everything behind it. She mainly did from her kitchen table on virtual calls in a different time zone. So, but she had the vision and she was willing to do what it took to do it. And she's like just in a couple of years, she's got almost 300 locations open now. So it's fantastic, and the franchisees love it, because it's just a real prestige brand. It's so fun to do, and it's super lucrative with many different types of revenue stream. It wouldn't have happened if the women had been too rigid to like, I only want to do this.
So when you're evaluating a franchise for a client, what I'll say 3 questions do you insist that they ask before commencing or signing any agreement?
Well, as a consultant, one, I'm going to have my client's going to be in touch with a franchise attorney and financing people. I will tip my hat to the experts they need in those areas. And then it just kind of depends on what's important and germane to their market and what they're looking at. Like for some people, the important thing to ask is there's so many people that it's like, well, I don't want to have to work 40 hours a week anymore. I want a business. I need that revenue stream, but can we find something where I only have to work 10 or 15 hours a week? And it's like, yeah, I mean, there's a lot out there with an executive model, but most of them aren't going to start that way. There's going to be a ramp, and it's like once you hit these metrics, then you're easy peasy. So a good question for that client to be asking, I would say ask the franchisees, not just the ZOR, but, call a bunch of franchises out there. Ask them, how long did it take you to go up that ramp? And then ask yourself, it's like, okay, do I have the energy to go up that ramp? If it's going to take 6 months or 18 months? Am I willing to put in what it's going to take to get where I want to go? So that would be it. Others, it might be a good question to ask, where do you get most of your leads? Are you getting most of them from the corporate marketing funnel, or do I have to go out and shake hands with people? I had a dear friend, didn't work with me, but they had chosen a franchise that didn't really fit their personality. They didn't like shaking hands and smiling. They wanted to sit behind their desk. And the model that they chose required a lot of, face to face to build some business to business relationships. So they hated it. And so they had to end up hiring a manager, which kind of cuts into your bottom line. So that's another question to ask yourself. If I want to be hands off, is this a model where I could hire a manager and they could do it? So that's another good question, to get into the weeds. Don't be afraid to ask kind of personal questions.
This is probably more on the squishy, softer, qualitative side, but I can speak from my own personal experience. As I entered into a franchise agreement, I'm in my second year with EOS. I did not anticipate a death in the family, relocation, a spouse who wants me to retire, those kinds of things, right? Where even with the best of, sitting down and figuring out what business development do I need to put into this to break even, to make money, to hit some lofty number where like it looks really interesting and something I want to do. I think the unforeseen, you kind of got to explore that too and be honest with yourself, because I could not have predicted some of the things I just mentioned. However, it had an impact coming in as a franchise owner. And if I could talk to myself 2 years ago, I would said, hey, think about these unforeseen life experiences or life events that could or possibly could happen in the next 2 years. Do you want to make that decision now? Do you want to hold? Do you want to, think about how that's going to impact your journey and take that into consideration? Yes, I followed almost exactly what you talked about. I engaged a franchise agreement lawyer who went through it line by line and gave me advice. And probably you see this too. Many franchisors aren't going to change the markup that a lawyer comes back with. They're just going to say, hey, either take it or leave it. And I took it. And I'm not saying like there was anything that stood out, but lawyers doing their job, they mark it up and say, well, you might want to be aware of this and aware of that. So I fully believe that that's a huge benefit and something I would highly encourage anyone considering an investment in a franchise. So what do you see as let's talk about Southwest Florida. What do you see as the most promising franchise sectors right now in Southwest Florida and even nationally?
Home services are
Mm.
definitely booming because we have so many people moving here. And if you've had to get some drywall done, or you've had to get some power washing, or whatever the home service is, you've probably had to wait a little bit because everybody's slammed, everybody's booked. So that lets you know that there's a need for it. I evaluate every community on a case to case. And most of the franchises, they're not really looking for somebody to go out there and do the power washing. They need that executive manager. So if you're the kind of person that can manage a team, which a lot of veterans are very good at that. I'm working with a guy right now. He's managed up to 2,200 people, or 2,200 people under his command. So he's really good at that, identifying the leaders in different segments and creating smaller teams within the team. And that's what they're looking for. I would say, and you might chuckle when I say this, we're probably good on car washes for now.
Yes, I would argue that that's one of them. Yeah.
And there's some other parts of the country where car wash will be great, but I think we're good here in Southwest Florida. There's also a lot of support services models that are really good right now for everyone's kind of getting segmented on things like bookkeeping, virtual assistants. I mean, there's like over 70 identified business segments that I work with. So it really comes down that first step in the journey of just getting to know the client, of what they're good at, and finding that secret sauce that speaks with them, and finding that the team that's going to like fit their personality, they're going to do well with. There's also a lot of aging population down here. So there's a gazillion different ways you can go with support for seniors now, from, not just finding assisted living, but also support services for keeping them in their home, and heightened security everywhere. So, I mean, wherever you want to jump in, give me a call, because it's amazing how well we can fine tune your search and find the thing that is just unexpectedly a perfect fit for you, because you had this one unique thing and they're looking for that one unique thing.
I came to Southwest Florida earlier this year, back in January of 2025. We're coming up on 1 year here. I am amazed by the breadth and depth, and you talked about home services. How many companies are between Cape Coral, south to Marco Island, and everything else in between? So that's Cape Coral, Fort Myers, Estero, Bonita Springs, Naples, Marco Island. It is amazing, the service sector here in Southwest Florida. By chance, I don't mean to put you on the spot, do you have a feel for how many companies are here in Southwest Florida?
Well, I don't really know off the top of my head, but I could give you one number. When I bought the territory for my son for FiberNew, it encompasses Cape Coral, Pine Island, Burnt Store Marina, Page to Pagefield, Whiskey Creek, that chunk. And they identified 10,000 businesses in that territory alone. Now, one thing I'll say though and this is why I think franchising is so important if you want to enter that sector, not all home services are created equal. And there's a lot of liability around doing things in people's homes. So a lot of those, you might see a wrapped vehicle and it's like, oh, they do home services. They may not do it well, and they may not be in business 6 months from now, So I think it kind of benefits the community and the entrepreneur to tap into the resources and the economy of scale, just the deals on the insurance and stuff that you get by being a franchise owner are going to be far greater than if you're the lone wolf out there trying to identify the right kind of coverage that you need for that service. I mean, there's just so many layers of complication that, a franchise just kind of solves a lot of those issues, and it'll bring better quality services to the communities, and it'll also be a better experience. So it's like 5 times better success rate that you're going to still be in business 10 years from now if you started out with a franchise system.
All right, we'll get you out of here on this. Looking back on your career, from journalism to tech support to entrepreneurship, what skills surprised you by translating the best into business ownership?
Oh, this was wild. So I worked my way through college and it was just like a terrible economy when I was starting my career. But I had a vo-tech degree just from stuff in high school and everything for graphic arts. And so I did graphic arts for a while, and it was like being rapidly replaced by computers. And then all these years later, Luke and I are looking for a franchise and stuff, and he liked FiberNew, and a lot of that is like color matching, and some of it gets down to like hand detailing thin lines and stuff. And I'm like, oh my goodness, that graphic arts thing came full circle. So that really surprised me. I never thought I'd use that skill.
That's great. I love that. Well, Robyn, thank you for sharing your journey and perspective on franchising. Your story shows how experience in communication and customer service can evolve into real business ownership, and how franchising can be a powerful bridge for people ready to build something of their own. For anyone interested in learning more or connecting with Robyn, visit thefranchiseconsultingcompany.com, or you can reach her on LinkedIn at Robyn Deering. Robyn spelled with a Y, R-O-B-Y-N. I want to thank our audience for listening to Growth Ceilings. I'm Jim Lovelady, professional EOS implementer. We'll see you the next time. Thank you.
You've been watching the Growth Ceilings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ready to grow.